So, where does this leave Berserk? Well, and perhaps I'm a fool here, but I am really rooting for this show to turn it around. Maybe Itagaki will learn better to work with 3D, or maybe he'll be replaced at some point. But believe it or not, I'm going to be there to find out. Friends, listen to the ramblings of this poor, delusional fool. So young, so innocent, his hope yet to be crushed by the tragedy that was Berserk 2016. And yet here we stand, not even a full year later, and this same blight has befallen our community. But it is in this time of infinite darkness that we must take each other hand in hand, look deep within ourselves, and acknowledge that which we know is true. That Berserk 2017 is still terrible. I think it's fair to say that I don't really go after shows very often, and when I do, it's because A, I think there's a story there, or B, I see a large amount of lost potential. And in the case of Berserk 2K16, it was very much the latter. One of the greatest illustrative stories ever committed to paper, reduced to a bumbling, incompetent production that relied solely on the strength of its source material. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting when I uploaded my video Berserk 2016 What the Hell Happened, but it sure wasn't the hundreds of thousands of views it ended up getting, nor the throngs of fans vehemently defending the series. To this day, it remains my most contested video, with a comment section I actively lose HP while reading. And it's a conversation that's picked up again recently, due to the advent of Berserk 2K17, a follow-up series in the exact same style from the same director working with the same studio. And it wasn't long after the first episode aired that I started getting questions asking how I felt about the improvements 2017's offering made over the previous series. And 9 episodes later, I can say I don't feel anything because I don't think they exist. Everything that was wrong with Season 1 is still an issue with Season 2, to the point that if I were to do a similar technical breakdown, we'd get a nearly identical video. So instead, what I'd like to do today is take some of the most commonly heard defenses for Berserk 2016, refute them, and then apply them to 2017. Also, this is very much going to be a follow-on from 2016's video, so I'd advise checking that out if you have not already. Let's start with one of my personal favorites. You're a pathetic fucking loser, and the average person doesn't care about things like direction and cinematography. Well, no matter how true that first part is, the second simply is not. Shot composition and camera theory inform us on the basest possible level of how to feel about a given scene. Good camera movement can establish the setup for an entire section, can imply guilt or convey dread. And it does all this by working off our own physiology. Most humans are born with the gift of sight, and as we mature, we learn to process and interpret that visual information and draw meaning from it. And what good camera work does is leverage the way we've learned to see things and use that to make us feel whatever the director desires. So even if you're not well versed in the theory behind shot composition and camera work, these are techniques designed to affect you on a subconscious level. Take for example 2017's Get Out, a film with tremendous camera work. The opening scene features a man being stalked by a car, and the entire scene is a single unbroken shot, which for the most part carefully keeps both the young man and the car on screen. And this is important because it so effectively visually communicates the character's rising anxiety about the car and the intent of its owner. And because of this, there's not a single moment of this section you don't feel his tension and worry, making for not only a compelling scene, but also speaks to the broader social paranoia and otherness inherent to the themes of this movie. And this kind of informative camera work is consistent throughout Get Out, whether it's used to create a feeling of isolation as a quick, unnerving scare, or to establish an uncomfortable, unwanted intimacy. In other words, good camera work is a communication from the director to the audience. Now, with that in mind, what do you think the director of Berserk 2017 is trying to say with any of these camera movements? What do they add to the scene? What is their purpose? And the answer is nothing. These are empty, distracting miscommunications that should be telling us more about the world and characters, but instead their actual purpose seems to be to distract either from the low quality animation or the complete lack of animation altogether. And this isn't an uncommon technique in animation, but it tends to only work if the visuals on screen are engaging enough to hold our attention, which the visuals of Berserk 2017 are not, which also happens to bring us handily to our next topic. You're paying too much attention to the visuals. Berserk is all about the story. Well, yes, Berserk has a fantastic, sweeping, long-running story with great characters and broad, relatable themes. But the key part in conveying that story has always been through its visuals. Let's take a look at one of my favourite examples of this, the page from the manga where Guts and Casca kiss for the first time. Every small visual component of this page just works so beautifully, from the size of the panels used to show the tiny, intimate interactions, to the subtleties in how their facial expressions are drawn, to how the composition completely changes when they finally do kiss. And it all comes together to create the feeling of very genuine intimacy that accompanies two people kissing for the first time, and all the awkward longing that entails. And this same intensely focused visual storytelling is a constant throughout Berserk, to the point that it's rare for a key story moment to have any dialogue at all, and it all works because of the painstaking care and detail that's gone into crafting these visuals. And it's this same care and detail utterly missing from every scene of the new series. There's countless things I could point to here. The complete disregard in continuity on a shot-to-shot basis, the haphazard editing that gives us barely a second to appreciate the rare, actual good compositions of the show, but the real culprit for me is the rigid, expressionless character models and the stiff, lifeless way they animate. Take any shot from the new Berserk and compare it to the corresponding panel from the manga, and look at the valley of difference. All the rage, all the desperation and insanity of Guts in this panel, that conveyance of the seething hatred he feels for Griffith in this moment, is completely missing from the anime. And if the emotions of its characters can be considered crucial to the narrative of Berserk, the fact that they're so poorly conveyed in 2017 means that every scene from the new series is missing crucial parts of its story. In other words, you can't separate Berserk's visuals from its narrative. Well, it's better than nothing. I was baffled at how many times I saw this comment, and I think to properly respond, we need to break it down into 3 parts. 1. Here is a drawing I did of Guts and Griffith on a napkin. Now, I'll be the first to say it's not great, but it is better than nothing. See that? See how that argument can justify basically any form of adaptation regardless of quality or skill, while also being completely counterintuitive to any kind of critical discord? And 2, even then, what does better mean? That it is more than nothing? Well, sure, it's physically more than nothing because anything is more than the absence of that thing, but does that really mean better? Is a bad adaptation of a series now really more valuable than the potential for that series to get a good one in the future? Well, as it happens, we have an example of this exact thing from the 2000 OVA adaptation of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And while I think there is actually a certain charm to this series,
what if this so-called stand of mine had actually thrown that iron bar at you? Just what would you have done then?
I don't think anyone's going to argue that the production or tone were very faithful to the spirit of the manga. And the result was that JoJo's was essentially ignored by the West for 12 years, before finally getting a more faithful adaptation in 2012, at which point it gained a massive surge of popularity, greatly benefiting this series, its creators, and its fans. And I think it's pretty safe to say that this same popularity surge has not happened for Berserk, and as long as the new series remains at its current quality, it never will. And my third and final point, you deserve better. Okay. If you're someone who genuinely enjoys Berserk 2017, Please understand, no part of this video is intended to ridicule you or to retroactively convince you you didn't enjoy a series you did. But if you did enjoy it, then it's in spite of this adaptation and not because of it. I mean, sure, I like seeing Guts, Griffith, Casca, and Shirk in whatever form they may come, because these are great characters with fantastic writing behind them. Which is why they and you deserves an adaptation that builds on that greatness, not detracts from it. And there is no reason to expect any less. Why keep complaining about it? In fairness, this is a good question. Why make another video complaining about Berserk when there are literally dozens of other series, games, and movies I want to cover? And the answer is because they made another series, and in doing so, the conversation has changed. I can totally accept that Berserk 2016 could have been an accident. Budgeting, scheduling, staff issues, any number of reasons outside the creator's control could have resulted in the low quality of the first series. But now the second season is here and it's just as bad, and in some cases I'd say worse. And so it's becoming clear that this is all intentional. A shoddy adaptation pumped out at the lowest possible quality, safe in the knowledge that the people who love Berserk will support it regardless. And that's what has me so heated on this one, the fact that they're willing to leverage the fans' love of a series in order to turn a quick and tidy profit. And this is something I very much feel the creators deserve to be called out for. Ultimately, I don't really know where Berserk goes from here, but at the very least the manga is currently back out of hiatus and it's still great. And if you'd like to hear me talk more about it and Berserk in general in a more positive light, then you can do so with my video Why You Should Watch/Read Berserk. Friends, thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed these videos and would like to help me create more like them, then consider heading over to patreon.com/supereyepatchwolf, where for as little as $1 you can see your name listed with my beautiful band of hawk right here. This week I'd like to particularly thank Diss Track, Cornelius Cross, Nickel Raisin Wilson, Sweeze, and Black Liquid Surra. Black Liquid Sorrow? Black Liquid... yeah, okay. Thanks a million, Black Liquid. You can also find me on the Let's Fight a Boss video game podcast, where we'll be talking E3, Tekken 7, and Yakuza 0. Or you can come find me on Twitter @eyepatchwolf. Friends, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.